Today, we're digging into the absolutely wild, chaotic, and honestly, world-changing story of India's startup revolution. It's a tale of old traditions, a whole lot of new money, and this crazy quest to deliver a single sock in under 10 minutes. Let's get right into it. For generations in India, the conversation around the dinner table was pretty much the same. If you were a bright young kid, the path to a good life was clear. You get a stethoscope, or you get a calculator. It was safe, it was respectable, and it was pretty much the dream of every single parent.
But then a new generation showed up with let's call it a slightly different idea. An idea that sounded completely bonkers to anyone who had built their life on stability and security. The dream wasn't a safe career anymore. Nope, it was a billion-dollar valuation.
And this clash right here, this huge gap between the old economy of steady jobs and this new digital dream of just explosive growth, well, that's at the very heart of our story.
Okay, so to really get how this explosion happened so ridiculously fast, we have to rewind the clock a bit. We've got to look at the economic cage that India had built around itself, and to be fair, the very good reasons it had for doing it in the first place.
What's so interesting here is how that first era directly led to the second one. I mean, for centuries under British rule, India's wealth was just systematically drained and shipped overseas. So naturally, when independence came, the government's #1 priority was protection. They created something called the License Raj, this super complex web of permits and regulations meant to keep foreign exploitation out. The only problem, it also walled off new investment in innovation. So that protective system, it dominated the economy for decades. But as you can see here, things started to shift in the 1990s as the government slowly began to open the doors. That really set the stage. But the real, unbelievable explosion, that didn't kick off until after 2010.
So the doors were unlocked, but what was the actual spark? What lit the fuse on this massive economic fire? Well, it was something that could literally fit in your pocket.
All of a sudden, hundreds of millions of people got their hands on two game-changing things at the exact same time: incredibly cheap smartphones and dirt cheap, almost free mobile data. For a whole new generation of entrepreneurs, the math was just obvious. And the opportunity, it was absolutely massive.
And that simple calculation led directly to this, the unicorn stampede. We're talking about a period of absolute madness, dizzying speed, and a flood of foreign money that basically turned the entire Indian economy on its head. Now, before we go any further, let's just make sure we're on the same page. In the startup world, a unicorn isn't some mythical creature. It's something that feels almost as rare, a private startup company that hits a valuation of over $1 billion. That's $1 billion. Just let that number sink in for a second. Suddenly, the ultimate dream for India's youth wasn't about landing a safe government job. It was about building one of these, probably from a cramped apartment, fueled by nothing but instant noodles and a whole lot of code. And what followed was this incredible battle. See, local Indian startups weren't just creating new markets out of thin air. They were going head-to-head with the biggest global giants right on their own turf. You had Flipkart taking on Amazon, you had Ola battling Uber, and then there was the absolutely brutal food delivery war between Zomato and Swiggy.
Things got so intense that the main goal wasn't even profit anymore. It was all about growth at any and all costs. The business models reached a level of absurdity that was just peak startup culture, with companies burning through actual mountains of cash on insane discounts just to get one more user.
So you have to ask yourself, right? Does losing money on every single order make any logical sense? Well, for a lot of those individual companies, the answer turned out to be a big fat no. But, and this is key, for the country as a whole, something way bigger, something much more profound was happening just beneath all that chaos.
Because, you see, this was never just about a few tech founders becoming billionaires. This was about hundreds of millions of people having their daily lives totally rewired, leapfrogging old technologies, and jumping straight into a digital-first future. And the result of all that frenzy and all that investment, it was just staggering. In just over a decade, India went from being this highly regulated, kind of slow-moving economy to having the third largest startup ecosystem on the entire planet. Think about that. A huge piece of this puzzle was this revolutionary payment system called UPI. It basically let India skip the whole credit card era. It was just so simple. A vendor shows a QR code, you scan it with your phone, punch in a PIN, and boom, money moves instantly from your bank to theirs. Suddenly, everyone from a fancy mall to the tiniest street-side chaiwala was part of the digital economy.
So here's the crucial point, the main takeaway. The unicorn stampede, as messy and sometimes irrational as it was, ended up fundamentally rewriting the economic destiny of an entire nation.
Now, let's be real, it wasn't some perfect fairy tale. A lot of these high-flying startups crashed and burned spectacularly. Investors eventually sobered up and started asking for, actual profits, and the immense pressure on delivery and gig workers became a really serious social issue. But, and this is the big one, it proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that India's youth could do way more than just provide IT support. They could build their own global empires.
The entire global perception just shifted. The narrative was no longer about India being the world's back office. It was about India being a source for the world's next great creators and innovators.
And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty mind-blowing question. We've now seen what happens when a billion people are brought online as consumers. But what happens to the world when that exact same billion people are fully empowered, not just to consume, but to create?